Okay, student, this is the video to explain the exercise number 8 of the quiz. The exercise number 8 of this quiz is exactly the same than the finger exercise, okay? And, and you have an example in the class material that is called solving a, a Modigliani's life cycle hypothesis exercise, something like that, okay? You can find it in the class material. Okay. Okay. Let's read the A exercise A. Homer Simpson smooth consumption as much as possible. He will live for 60 years. The 10 last, he will be retired. If you're retired, are you producing income? Are you obtaining income? Of producing, okay? Because something, okay, some people is obtaining the retirement plan. That is not a producer, okay? He's not producing this income. He's obtaining from his savings, okay? The retirement plan, you can understand in this kind of exercise the retirement plan like the saves that he could do during his life, okay? Using an Excel sheet, build Homer's income, consumption, savings, and wealth tables in graph. What tables in graph? You have the example of these tables in graph in the exercise that is solved in the class material. Okay, and the graph is very simple. Okay, you have just to graph a line graph. Okay, consider that Omer started to obtain incomes when he was 15 years old. Then he started to work at 15 years old. Before 15 years old, he didn't work. Okay? And if you do not work, are you producing income? Okay? Then how much were the incomes of Homer Simpson during these 14 years, year 1 to year 14? Okay, if he was not working, he was not producing incomes. Okay, it's logic, it's just logic, it's basic. Okay, his first income when he was 15 years old was your day of birth multiplied by 100. An example, in my case 16 multiplied by 100, then 1600. In the case, the first year Omer, in my case, 1600. Okay, each year after the 15, in year 16, he started to obtain his income increased 3% each year. Okay, then in my case it will be 1600 the year 15, and the year 16 will be 1600 multiplied by 1.03. That is to obtain the 3%, an increment of the 3%. And year 17, you will have the income of year 16 multiplied by 1.03 and go on until he retired. He retired, said that he retired in year 50 because the 10 last years he will be retired. Okay, well, you have your incomes. Okay, you have now how much he's producing during these years. Analyze. You have to write your conclusion analysis of this exercise, the life cycle approach on Homer Simpson's life. Okay, as this is exactly the same of the finger exercise, but with some changes, of course, and a little more longer because you can use the Excel. You will use the Excel tables and you will upload just one file, a PDF with tables and the graph and your analysis. Okay. And for that reason, we're using here 60 years. But let me explain you maybe a little more in deep the finger exercise. Okay. Let me share the screen of the finger exercise. Okay, we have here the finger exercise 12.1. Okay, now it's Mr. Fly's life lasts 6 hours. Okay, it's 6 hours. No matter if it's hours or years or month, that's no matter. Okay, the first 2 hours, Mr. Fly does not work. Same. If Mr. Fly does not work, how much is is his income in that year? If he did not work, he did not have income. Okay, from hours 3 to 5, he works as much as he can and obtain the equivalent of a pound hour of food. Okay, we're using here a unit of pound hour of food, but that could be $1, $1 million, $50. Okay, that's the point. That's the total amount of income that he is obtaining in an hour. Okay, the 6 hour he will not work. He's retired. If he's retired, he's not producing income. Okay, assume that Mr. Fly follows the life cycle hypothesis. You have to calculate. Okay, the first question, as Mr. Fly follows the life cycle hypothesis, he smooths his consumption as much as he can. Then his consumption per hour is, if you follow the exercise, the Modigliani's exercise solved in the class material, you know that the consumption this hypothesis, Modigliani's life cycle hypothesis, says that you will smooth your consumption of your incomes. Then your consumption will be the total income that you will obtain through your life, okay, divided by your life cycle, the number of years that you will live. Okay, then in this case, Mr. Fly has 6 hours, and he will obtain from hour 3 to 5 the equivalent of 1 pound of food. Then hour 3, hour 4, and hour 5. In all his life, he will obtain 3 pounds of food. Okay, 3 pounds of food. That is his income in all his life. Then his consumption per hour is the total of the income that he will obtain during his life divided by the life, his life. In this case, we are using hours. In Homer Simpson, we're using years. Then we divided these 3 pounds per hour, we divided for 6 years. Then we obtain the amount of pounds that he will consume during his 6 hours, 6 hours of life of Mr. Fly. Okay. The second question is calculate the savings by hour of Mr. Fly. Okay, you can save if you are producing something. If you do not produce something, and if you read the class material, you know that under this hypothesis, when you're not producing, you are, or whether consuming your savings or borrowing. Okay, borrowing. But Mr. Fly in hour 1 and hour 2, he does not have savings. Why? Because he has never produced any income. Okay, then his consumption in hour 1 and hour 2 is financed through a loan. Okay, he had to borrow. He had to borrow uh, this. the same amount of his consumption in hour one and hour two. Then the savings in hour one and hour two, how much is it? If you are not producing, you cannot save. Okay. In hour three, he produced in hour three. Okay. He produced 1 pound of food in hour three, but he consumed the amount of pounds that he's consuming per hour that you found in question one. The difference would be the savings, but Mr. Fly has to face the responsibilities, and he has to start to pay the loans that he took for cover for covering his consumption in hour one and hour two. Then, okay, as you can figure out, you have one in of incomes in hour three consume zero point 0.5, then he could save zero point 0.5, but he has to pay the zero point 0.5 that borrowed for hour one. Okay, then the savings is in hour three is zero because he had to pay. Okay, in hour four is the same thing. He produced one, he consumed 0.5 pounds, then he could save zero point 0.5, but he still needs he still needs to pay the consumption of hour two. Okay, in hour five he does not have any loan to pay because he has paid everything. Now in hour five he produces 1 pound of food, consume 1 pound of food, and save 1 pound of food. Okay, and hour six, hour six, you you know that Mr. Fly is retired. He's enjoying of his golden hours. Okay, then he did not produce anything in hour six. Zero income, zero point 0.5 of consumption. From where come this zero point 0.5? From the savings of year five. Okay, then could he save in year in hour in hour six? He could save in hour six? No. Sorry if I'm changing hour in years. Okay, don't worry about that. Understand that the same. Okay, at this moment. Okay. After that, you have the question three. The question three say calculate the wealth by hour of Mr. Fly, and you have a hint. The hint is remember that if he needed to borrow for funding his consumption, that represents a negative wealth. Well, in in hour one, he had to borrow. How much? The total amount of his consumption, 0.5. In hour two, the same. He had to borrow zero point 0.5. But how much is the wealth? Remember that your wealth is the sum of all your investments. Okay, but also you had to face the sum of all your liabilities. Then Mr. Fly has a negative wealth in hour one because he consumed zero point 0.5 through a loan. Okay, then Mr. Fly in hour one has minus zero point 0.5, but in hour two he had also had also to request a loan again of zero point 0.5. Then in hour two his wealth is minus one because you have your what you borrowed in hour one and what you need also you borrow in hour two. Your wealth is negative one. Okay. In hour three, remember that in hour three, Mr. Fly started to pay his loans, and he paid 0.5. Then now his wealth increased from -1 to -0.5. And in hour 4, he paid all his liabilities because he paid another 0.5. Okay, then now in hour 4, his wealth is 0 for that reason because he paid in full the liabilities that he had. In hour 5, he saved 0.5. Then now his wealth is 0.5 because he, in hour 5, he does not have um, liabilities. He has only savings. Is the is the wealth of Mr. Fly, and that wealth is used to finance his consumption in hour 6. Then in hour 6, he withdraw his savings. Then in hour 6, he has not a wealth at all. Okay. Well, this is the same. This is the same for the exercise with Homer Simpson, but you have to use 60 years, 10 the 10 last years he will be retired. The first 14 years he he did not work and follow the instructions of the exercise. Hope this helps. Thank you.